Hello, welcome. I'm Kim Howerton. This is The Live, and I'm glad to be here with you. By the way, I'm both on Facebook and YouTube, so you can make comments in either places and I'll be able to see them and respond. But if you're like, where is that question coming from? It might be from the other place that you're not watching on. So I do this every Tuesday, barring any major incidents, and I'm here for your questions. Tonight, I thought I'd jump in with a topic. I got a question last week that was asking about reverse dieting. And I think I talked about it briefly, but I thought I would go into some detail just at the beginning of this call so that I could give a little more detail because it's a topic that comes up a lot. So those of you that are new to my channel, welcome. I'm Kim Howerton. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed. Either if on it's Facebook, then what do you subscribe? Like, what do you do? I think that's what you do there on YouTube. Subscribe so that you'll get notifications when these things are happening. And also, it just makes me feel good that I have subscribers. I have self-esteem issues. Reverse dieting. I'm somebody who has lost close to 100 pounds using low carb keto approaches. And that's not it alone. I've had to use a lot of different methods of, tools, I should say, to, get where I wanted to go. And so one of the things that has been essential on my journey was using reverse dieting. And so I thought I would tell you what that is, because some people always ask, what is it? So, traditional dieting, I guess you could define it as you're eating a certain amount and then you choose to eat less with the desire to see body fat loss. Now, when I say less, some people clean up their diet. They change the way they eat. They change the foods they use. But the ultimate sort of reality is, for most people, that would mean a lower caloric intake than maybe they were eating when they were gaining weight. Now, obviously, there can be a variety of things because it's not just one thing, but a discussion of reverse dieting makes zero sense without discussing caloric intake, because that's really what it's focused on. So let's look like traditional dieting. We're eating a certain amount that's causing us to gain weight. We eat less, we start to lose weight. We call that a diet, just in general terms. Obviously, a lot more nuance goes into things. A reverse diet is sort of the opposite, if you want to look at it that way. It's strategically choosing to eat more with the desire to raise our metabolic rate. So when we reduce the amount of food intake, calories, for some period of time, we have something that goes on called metabolic adaptation. Our metabolism adapts to the amount of calories that we are eating and decides that's how much we're getting. It better make the best of it. And so it reduces our metabolic rate so we can survive. But ultimately, that means that we lose less. So the less we eat, the less we start to lose, because our metabolic rate goes down. And so what a reverse diet does is, I think of it as stair steps. So you're, whatever that low amount is, you're stair stepping up little steps at a time, usually 50 to 100 calories on average a week up. So say you were starting at 1,200 calories. Next week, your daily average will be 1,250. The following week, 1,300. The following week, 1,350, yada, 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 until you find what I call the caloric ceiling. So you've now taken those steps up and up and up until you hit that point where, okay, I've maxed out my body's ability. You're hitting that ceiling to eat more without gaining any significant amount of weight. So that's really it. You're trying to eat more without seeing any significant weight gain. That's the point of a reverse diet. There are many reasons. Well, not many. There are a few reasons to do a reverse diet. One of the things I like most about a reverse diet is a lot of us out in the weight loss community are not really sure what our maintenance calories are. That is, what should we eat to stay the same weight? We spend our whole lives gaining or losing, and we've never been all that thoughtful about it. So we don't know what that maintenance looks like. And you can go online to a billion different calculators, right? Everybody and their brother has a calculator on how to figure out what you should eat. But each of us are biologically individual, which means that that calculator is only a guess. And this is how you can figure out what your maintenance calories actually are. And then you can then use a reverse diet as well to push the envelope to get what is your maintenance calories higher and higher. So you can see more and more food intake and not see weight gain go with it. So it's absolutely 100% like a tool that should be in people's toolbox that I think is really important. And I just wanted to tell you what a reverse diet is, because a lot of people are like, what the heck is a reverse diet? And it is something that's been essential to my journey. And I think it's probably for anyone who's ever been stalled for more than, a few weeks, it might be something pivotal for you. Who is a reverse diet great for? Well, chronic dieters, anyone who's spent more than a year or even 6 months on a calorie reduced approach, where they're, maybe the first thing they're not trying necessarily to eat a very, very low calorie diet, but they notice that they're not eating very much. Your body has then adapted to not eating very much. And then in the future, if you ever want to eat more than that, you're going to have to address your lowered metabolic rate. And yeah, that even happens on keto. So those are some reasons that somebody might want to look at doing a reverse diet. And for me, it made life livable because I had reached a pretty unlivable food intake at one point, and I like food. All right. Tina says, and if you have questions about that or any topics, please write them in and I will answer as best as I can. Tina says, I have my panna cotta chilling, looking forward to trying it out. Any other recipes for the Equip protein powder? I mean, I throw Equip protein powder in a lot of things. If you are on my Instagram, I made something called protein ice cream. Hold on one sec. Let's see if I can show you this little video. See if it'll play. Nope. That's protein ice cream, which it's ice cream's kind of a stretch. It's basically, I would call it a Frosty. Like, remember those Wendy's Frosties? That's kind of how it comes out to me. But basically, I take Equip protein powder. I also add in a second kind of protein powder, but just a little bit, and it's not super necessary. But you take Equip protein powder, some xanthan gum. You got to use xanthan gum for this, or it doesn't get the right texture. It doesn't get fluffy and creamy. A bunch of ice, a little bit of almond milk. And then you can add flavorings. You can add cocoa, you can add vanilla, you can add a little more sweetener, you can add whatever you want. But really, you just need the protein powder, some xanthan gum, and then a lot of ice and some type of milk. And then I do it in my food processor because my blender is not strong enough. But if you have a good blender is more traditional choice to do it in. And you process it until it gets this sort of silky, creamy consistency. And literally, like 1 scoop of protein powder and a half a cup of milk and a bunch of ice. And I've got 2.5 cups worth of this Frosty substance for like 130 calories. It's mostly protein. Right? Selena asked, could you make it an ice cream maker? This is designed that you don't need an ice cream maker. If you have an ice cream maker and you want to bring out the ice cream maker, then I would make ice cream. This is like a hack. You don't have to go through the freezing of the thing. Yeah. I'm not sure you could make ice cream out of something similar, but this is definitely like much less work intensive than hauling out the ice cream maker, I'm going to say. So what else is going on? So I would say if you want to make ice cream in an ice cream maker, I would do something a little more elaborate than that. So yeah, more ice creamy. So what else? So I'm still doing my screen keeps doing something weird. Sorry if something weird is happening with you guys. I am still in a short fast phase and seeing results. So that's good news for me. And one of the reasons that ice cream is saving my bacon today because I was like, I really need a little more something. I need something. So that is what is happening. I put up, so that was just a little teaser I put up on Instagram, but I did a video of me making my protein ice cream today, so I will put that up. It's literally you just throw everything in a blender or whatever. So I used Martha asked what kind of protein powder. You can use pretty much any protein powder. Optimally, I'll tell you, I think it's best to use some whey protein or a beef isolate. Either one is fine. So Equip is a brand of beef protein isolate that I like the flavor. And I also like that it's not dairy. So if somebody doesn't do dairy, they can do that and it's not dairy. And it tastes like it's very creamy. And it has a very good list of ingredients. So I like the Equip. So I make it with the Equip, but then I also add just a teeny bit of casein protein powder. So a little lesson on protein powders. So dairy, when you get dairy, it's a combination. The proteins in dairy, I should say, there's more in dairy than this, but when you break down dairy into just the proteins, you end up with 80% casein protein and 20% whey protein. So it's part casein, part whey. And then my brain just had a brain fart and I'm like, did I get that backwards? But it's wheycein and it's K. Casein and whey. Wow. Okay. And so casein is this really interesting stuff. And casein is it gets very thick and gelatinous when you add liquid to it, the powder. And so basically if you took a bowl of casein protein powder and you added some liquid to it and you started stirring, you'd end up with pudding. Now eventually it would thin down again, but whey is much thinner. Now whey protein is digested really fast. Because of casein structure, it's actually digested very slowly. So there's lots of details about the difference between whey and casein. They're both isolated proteins, or they can be isolated proteins. So as an example, if you get keto chow is something called a milk protein isolate, which means that it's a mix of casein and whey, because it's the two milk proteins. Whereas a lot of people use whey protein isolate. Whey protein isolate is just whey, and casein protein isolate, which is also often called micellular casein, it's just very broken down casein, is just the casein. You can buy combo whey and casein, and an example of that is keto chow. The nice thing about when you combine them is that casein is slower digesting. Some people experience after whey protein that they're hungry really fast, that it digests so quickly. Casein lasts longer. It's also creamier. And so that's why when I made this protein ice cream, I put 20 grams of the Equip in, and then I just put 8 grams, which is a very small amount, of the casein in, just to give it a little more creaminess. Not required. Anyway, I'll be doing that recipe video, hopefully, if not tonight, then tomorrow. It'll be short. It's not that complicated. And because I have a really cheap, food processor, I have to throw a towel over it when I turn it on with this mix, because the powders in it are so light. I turn the thing on and everything like blows up. And I was getting like a shooting spray of protein powder out of the sides. Anyway, so I throw a towel on it to start. See? You got to do what you got to do. All right. So that is whey and casein. Anyway, that's the detail. Michelle says nut pods in coffee would break a fast. Correct. Anything protein does, but does fat. great question. So people talk about breaking a fast like a fast is a thing that you just, if you do anything, you'll break it, right? It's not like that exactly. Because I think that there's a term called breaking a fast, which means ending a fast. Because if you ever heard of the term breakfast, it's breaking your fast. It's intentionally ending a fast. That's breaking a fast. But because we also use the word break as in broken, as in damaged, I think that's how the word break got pulled into fasting. I think in the way that you mean, like will it break the fast, right? Will it end it? And so obviously if you're eating any significant amount of calories, it ends the fast. It's the break of the fast. It's the end of the fast. But a lot of people, I feel like, have this question about what will break a fast. And there are things that will alter some of the details of the fast, but is your fast completely broken? Is it ended? Is it as if from this point forward it's totally different and you get no benefits that you would have gotten from that fasting period? And that's not the case. So how do I want to say this? So yeah, if you consume any significant amount of protein, that's going to have an issue with your fasting. It's basically once you consume sort of over a certain, threshold, you've really started into that meal arena, and that's an issue. A lot of people will say, anything under around 35 calories, probably not going to have a significant impact on your fast, but it's really a question of what are you looking to get out of that fast? If you're looking simply at insulin reduction over the course of that fasting window, then just a little bit of fat is not going to have a significant insulin response. But there are many reasons that we might fast, and I just, it's a hard question to answer. It varies from person to person, and it's not broken, right? With a lot of different things, it's just subtly altered, and it's really about what you're trying to do and what you're trying to get out of the fast. Jamie, to your question, the answer is no. I'm an independent agent out on my own. Tracy said, hi from Connecticut, Fathead Pizza and deviled eggs for Din. Congratulations. I read that really quickly and I thought it said Fathead Pizza delivered. And I was like, well, you're a lucky duck. All right. Let's see what else is going on. What other questions do people have? Happy to answer them. It's a light night. People aren't that curious about things tonight. I don't know. It's just the time of year. Just so you guys know, next week I will have a special guest. If all goes according to plan, Nisha, my good friend Nisha Salisbury, will be joining me for the live. So that will be fun. So put it on your calendars. Yeah. But just talking about fasting some more, I will say I am not what I would call the world's fasting expert. That would be audacious of me to say, considering that personally fasting has not been a large part of my journey, in part because of my history with binge eating disorder. I don't respond super well to a lot of fasting. I do think that every person should probably not sleep eat. So there should be an overnight period where you're not eating. I certainly think that eating 2 meals a day is not a problem for most people. I think intermittent fasting is not a problem for most people, adult people, I should say. But how much fasting people want to do, totally up to them. And there are some great people out there teaching fasting that just aren't me. Leanne says, what is the quickest way to get rid of carb cravings? I'm Baba Wawa. Wow, I'm really dating myself with that one, aren't I? What is the quickest way to get rid of carb cravings and sweet cravings when starting over? So I think, we're all unique individuals and we all have different reasons that we have carb cravings. But for me, one of the things that I think is most essential in that starting over period, that period where you go from, not seeing, you've fallen off the wagon, something's happened, whatever, and now you're getting back into the low carb bucket. I think that one of the most important things we can do is to eat enough. I think when we are used to under eating, when we don't eat enough, we can often feel more vulnerable to cravings. And so I would say make sure you're eating really substantial, filling, dense meals. And if a sweet craving comes along, then you have a couple of options, one of which is to eat something savory instead, sort of rewire the thought, or something salty like pickle, right? Can sometimes just change that desire. So those are some things. Some people also will allow themselves something sweet, like an iced coffee with some sweetener in it or something like that. And they find that's enough to plug that hole a little bit and give them something that they're no longer wanting to tear the kitchen apart. And so you have to know yourself to know if you will be distracted by a better alternative sweet thing, or if you can't even go there, because some people can't even go there because once they open that door, those desires and cravings just continue. So that's really going to be an individual thing, whether that works for you or not. Andrea says, if you're still a bit insulin resistant, do you have to stay away from anything sweet tasting? I don't think so, Andrea. I mean, there are a lot of different opinions on sweetness. I've certainly talked to Benjamin Bickman about this. Ben Bickman, who's an insulin researcher, and he specifically focuses on insulin. And he is not concerned about sweetness. He's concerned about what the sweetness is coming from. But, he's not really concerned about use of things like erythritol or monk fruit, or the kinds of sweeteners that don't elicit a biological insulin response. What you're probably talking about is what some experts will talk about, which is the cephalic phase insulin release. So that response to any sweet taste. That insulin, there is a bit of an insulin response to that. There is actually an early phase insulin response to any food, the smell of food, the thought of food. It's that your body's first raising of insulin a bit so that you can be ready when that food starts to need to be digested and processed. But if you're somebody who, when you have sweet flavors, it's like game on and you want sweets all day long, then from a personality perspective, then you might be somebody who can't have anything sweet. But from a biological perspective, I personally don't think it's an automatic no. But again, it's going to be an individual variation about whether or not you do well when you taste things that are sweet. Tracy says, the cool thing about restarting is you're restarting with the knowledge and experience. Yeah, absolutely. Chris says, can a migraine be associated with keto flu? I've been on and off keto over the past few months. Started back a few days ago, woke up with a migraine. Yes, they totally can. And the thing that is probably at the root of your migraine is low sodium. So if you are on and off keto, you're going to be somebody who's especially sensitive to electrolyte depletion when you first go into ketosis. So you weren't in ketosis, now you are in ketosis. your body is going to experience diuresis. You're going to flush out a lot of your stores of water, because when we lower our well, a couple reasons. The first of which is when we lower our carbohydrate intake, grams of carbohydrate come with a few grams of water. So that water is no longer coming in. We have less water weight. And then also sort of our aldosterone levels change, which lowers sort of the sodium recycling and when our insulin goes down. So insulin goes down, which it always will when you head towards a lower carb approach. That insulin goes down, signals your adrenals to recycle less sodium, and then you are going to need to replenish the sodium or you're going to get a horrible headache. So make sure you get lots of sodium. Okay. Lucy said, sorry, my throat gets dry when I yell at the computer. And I don't know how to drink anymore. Okay. Lucy says, would using a blend of essential oils like pumpkin pie raise the response you were talking about? I mean, walking by a candle shop could cause some slight level of insulin response. It's minuscule. Thinking about food causes a slight insulin response. Watching a video on food, somebody mentioning a food, right? Any of these things can cause a slight insulin response. We're not looking for zero insulin response. That would be bad. So I think most of the stress about this particular topic is overblown. It's my personal opinion. Andrea said, I just replaced my severe Coke addiction. Coke Zero addiction. She doesn't mean the Coke addiction. Coke Zero addiction with Zevia, and was wondering if that's any better. I think it's better. I did that too. And quite honestly, there is Zevia in this thingy now. It's like half Zevia, half sparkling water. Patty says, love my salt has made a difference in just 2 days of no leg cramps at night. Well, that's exciting. I'm glad for you, Patty. Chris said, thank you. That's what I thought. I drank a couple of packets of Element and it finally started to ease up. Great explanation. Absolutely. Oh, good. I'm so glad. Element is pretty awesome stuff, as is Redmond's Relight. Element and Redmond's Relight. And then Keto Chow also makes a great one, but it's not flavored. So it's kind of in a different category in my mind. But the drink mixes from Element and Redmond's, I think are so, I'm not going to say they're essential in that you can totally do keto without buying any special products. But I will say they are amazing and I love them and they make me happy. And they're the only two drink mix ones that I actually recommend, because a lot of people will do something like buy Ultima and I'm like, it's a drink mix. It's not an electrolyte. It doesn't have hardly any sodium in there. Jamie mentioned Zip Fizz. Zip Fizz is still a little too low in my opinion, although Zip Fizz has quite a few other vitamins and minerals, but it's not as good in terms of its sodium amount as Element or Relight. And it also has quite a bit more fluff in there, fillers and things I'm not as excited about. Catherine says, which is the best sweetener for ketovore virtual hug? Whichever one works for you the best. I would say my top sweetener picks, the sweeteners that I think are probably the best for people are erythritol, allulose, Boca Sweet, stevia, and monk fruit. Those are the ones I tend to stick to. Now, some people get a little bloated, or they might say they get a little gassy from erythritol. Other people say they get gassy from allulose. So it can really vary. So pick the one that works best for you. And that would be the one I would say to go with. Lucy says, can you use sparkling water with Element? Yeah. And Chris just answered your question. Yeah, you can, but you have to be careful because salt and carbonation can bubble up and over. So go slow and leave yourself plenty. Like add a little Element, add some soda, leave lots of room in the glass for it to bubble up. continue to layer so you don't end up with a fountain of soda. Apparently for a while, I think the creators of Element were doing something that was like a Topo Chico challenge where you like opened a bottle of Topo Chico and poured your Element in and see if you could make it not all over the place. But, I don't think there was a reward for that other than not having a lap full of water. Okay, what else is going on? It is October already, which is crazy talk. And we're headed into the Chris found out the hard way. Chris found out the hard way. That's funny. Catherine says, thanks. How much sweetener is too much? Really depends on the person. So, I've gone through back and forth thinking about this in terms of, sweetener use, because it's such a hotly debated topic in the keto world. And where I've landed of late is I count total carbs. I count total carbs, including the carbs in the sweetener. I know that they don't count the same, but I'd rather count everything because, the whole net carb situation is very confusing. And it's not confusing because I can't do math. I can do math. The problem is that this type of fiber versus that type of fiber versus this type of sweetener versus that versus this. And you can never know exactly what a company is using. They might be using this fiber. They might be using that one. And so I think it's safer and better for all of us to just count total carbs. And I think, and again, I've gone back and forth on this thought, but I really have come to thinking that total carbs, including the carbs in your sweetener. Now, I don't then keep my total carb requirement under 20 total grams, because obviously if I'm using any sweetener that has any carbs, that would get a lot really fast. And so I currently call myself probably more low carb than keto, even though I'm still in ketosis, because I have found where my carb tolerance is. How many carbs can I eat and still see the kind of results that I want to see and see the kinds of blood sugar levels I want to see, all those things. And so I will allow myself now up to 50 grams of total carbs a day, no problem. And if so, I've got in that plenty of room for using some sweetener within reason. Now, I started at 30. I went from 20 to 30, and then I kind of saw from there. It's really hard for me to say how much sweetener is too much for any single person. There may be no upper limit until you feel like crap. Eventually it will displace all the good foods. Mostly the issue that I think is that a lot of the foods that contain sweeteners are not as nutrient dense as some of the foods that don't contain sweeteners, right? Like a steak is probably about the best thing you could eat. Pretty rare for us to need sweetener with that. And so whereas a dessert, you're going to add sweetener to, but generally speaking, with some rare exceptions, your dessert isn't necessarily where you're getting the majority of your nutrients from. Now, I certainly have made some very nutrient dense, beneficial sweet things, my protein ice cream being one of them. Not that it's mine. Everybody and their sister makes a protein ice cream. But anyway, that can be very beneficial. But again, it's not as nutrient dense as a steak. It's an isolated protein source. There's not a lot of other vitamins and minerals in there. So I guess my point is, I don't know that there's an upper limit for the average human in terms of sweeteners, but it is worth a look at what is the composition of my total intake, right? Michelle asks, what is the best way to test if you're in ketosis? A Keto Mojo or similar device where you test your beta hydroxybutyrate levels is probably the best method of testing whether or not you're in ketosis. I don't test regularly anymore. I will test at a But, I've talked to the Keto Mojo people and they said this thing, and I think it totally makes sense. Like, if you've been over the same, like, where your house is and where your office is, and you're going from your house to your office and your house to the office and the grocery store and the office and your house and the grocery store. And so, like, these roads. You don't need a map. You don't need to pull up Google Maps to get around your neighborhood. But if you're going somewhere you've never gone before, so if you're new to keto and you've never lived, it's a new neighborhood, you might want a map initially. And so that's where something like knowing your ketone levels can be very helpful. For me at this point, when I started to raise my carb tolerance, I looked at, I was curious, like, where do I stop being in ketosis? And it's pretty hard to get me out of ketosis pretty much these days. So I was able to see that, yeah, for the most part, I'm in ketosis. But I'm not as dependent on that being an important factor for me at this time. I'm insulin sensitive now. I'm no longer insulin resistant. I can make some broader choices. But for somebody who's just starting on their keto journey or just feels like they live in the dark a little bit, they don't really know how their food choices affect their body very well, then testing can be very helpful, I think. Ask for it for Christmas. Catherine says, I tried carnivore, but I can't totally eliminate sweetener. Am I an addict? Thanks, Kim. You're live as one of my most anticipated programs each week. Oh, that's very sweet. Thank you very much. Maybe I'm an addict for sure. And I would say for me, the mark of addiction, what I look at when I ask myself kind of the important questions is, what's the downside? So for me, I think I'm basically a food addict. And what is the downside of that? Well, the downside of food addiction is that I get obsessive about food. It affects my mood. And then I end up with high levels of body fat. I end up gaining weight because when my food addiction gets out of control, there is a negative repercussion of weight gain or fat gain, right? So those are like the downsides to my food addiction. There are more, but those are some of the main ones. And over time, as I've addressed some of these things, I'm mostly like, I'm pretty happy if the negative repercussions are managed. If you think about it that way, I went a good couple of months sweetener free during my carnivore experiments. And carnivore was the thing where I was like, that is a really hard line. So I'm going to draw the line there on sweetener. And so I did do some months sweetener free. And then I reintroduced sweeteners. And in that process of getting them out and then bringing them back in, I really was like, I don't really think these have a negative repercussion for me. And so I allowed them to come back into my life. And so I drink Zevia. Now I find Zevia a little too sweet these days. So I cut it with some sparkling water. So it's a little less sweet. When I have a dessert, I'm not going to put as much sweetener in it because I have less of a sweet tooth than I used to. But I still put monk fruit in my coffee. And I put Zevia in my drinks. So, I have sweet things and I find they work for me. Is that a sign that I'm a sweet addict? Maybe. Is there a negative repercussion I'm unwilling to live with? No, I'm totally willing to live with the current repercussions of my actions, right? I'm healthier. I'm inching my way to 100 pounds lost. I've lost another 4 pounds over the last couple of weeks on a cut I'm doing these days before I head into the holiday season. And I've included lots of sweeteners in that experience. My blood sugar levels are great. My fasting insulin is still good. So when I look at my actions and possible repercussions, for me, I'm like, I feel like the benefits outweigh the potential negatives that I don't have. Now, you could count a negative as I'm a little bit dependent, right? If I don't have anything sweet and I want something sweet, I might feel like I want something I can't have, but I don't think that's sort of an unusual experience. And really, in this day and age, it's not that hard to carry some sweetener with you if you need it for your coffee at a random time. And I can drink black coffee. I will drink black coffee. Will I enjoy it as much as as coffee with a little bit of sweetener in it? No, I won't. But I'll survive. So that's kind of my perspective on it. Hey, Wendy, Webby, wow, glad you found us. Michelle says, I use the strips. Yeah, the pea strips, not dependable at all. I wouldn't even bother. Grammy mentions Keto Mojo is great if you want to test. Yeah, definitely. Kevin says, I never count total carbs because one avocado and you're already at 12 grams of carbs for the day. They have like 10 grams of fiber. Totally. I just find that we talk about fiber not counting in a way that I don't think is 100% true. That being said, if you're eating a very low carb diet and the most carbs you're getting a day is from an avocado, I certainly don't think that that's going to have an enormous negative repercussion. Whereas I would say, it's just a different way of looking at the same thing. I would say, if you had a 30-gram carb limit instead of a 20-gram carb limit and you included an avocado and you're getting 12 grams of carbs from your avocado, then that kind of works out. Also, the other thing is I find most food trackers are wrong about their avocado measurements. They will say things like a large avocado, and you'll put a large avocado in. But then when you actually measure, I would say always do avocado by the ounce or the gram. Measure the weight of the meat, not the skin, not the pit, because that pit can really vary in size. Scoop out the meat you're going to eat, weigh it, measure it, and you're going to find that you're probably eating less grams of avocado than you think you are for most people and most avocados. Kim says, will you be doing a reverse diet program again? Yes, at the latest January, where I'll walk people through doing a reverse diet. Catherine says, thanks, Kim. I used to have an ED before Keto helps me clear that. Yeah, absolutely. Keto has, for me, do I still have the mental tendencies to be a food addict, to still have the eating disorder? Absolutely. But is it manageable now? Do I feel like I have the tools that I need to manage that? Absolutely. And I feel like going keto, being low carb, getting control of my diet was the essential step for me to be able to make the other moves. Now, for those of you that still feel like you're really under that eating disorder, food addict, I want to say, like the weight of it is still on you. I think that definitely the food part is super important, but then you have to be able to maintain the food part. And that part requires sort of some mental changes, some different ways of dealing with stress, some different coping skills. Because for a lot of us that have used food as a coping skill, and then we take the food away, we're like, what do I do now? You need to develop some substitutions in your life in terms of coping. Tracy says, has anyone noticed they're agitated or even a little angry when you get into ketosis? I just tested at 0.7 and have been a wretch all day. A couple of things. There are some people that notice when their ketone levels are above a certain level. Usually they're reporting that that's above 1 or 2 or 3, like a higher level. They are agitated, that they feel like they have energy that's kind of, they don't know what to do with, that like a flutteriness. That is that increased ketone level for some people. Other people say when they get above a certain level, they feel super calm and like clear. And more than anything, my suspicion is that when we first get into ketosis, when you mentioned, you're at 0.7, I'm wondering if you were out of ketosis for a while and now you're coming back into ketosis. For some people, that transition space, they feel anxious. The food changes are different. We're not yet very good we're still getting back into adaptation mode. Our brain isn't yet great at using ketones. We have to find ways to make that shift. And so that lowered carb, you're kind of having carb withdrawal, and that carb withdrawal can lead some people to be feeling agitated, anxious, out of sorts. Gammy says, Tracy, not for me, might be hormonal, but when she does a 5-day water fast, I am a bear. Yeah, definitely. Moving away from food in any way, whether that's just the carbs or whether that's all food, can make us irritated and agitated. And I swear on this cut that I've been on recently, I've had to explain repeatedly to my boyfriend that I am sorry, that I'm not quite myself, and that I am responding to things in a more sensitive manner than I would otherwise. My feelings are on the surface of my skin instead of where they usually are, because everything rubs me the wrong way when I am feeling out of sorts from under eating, because I'm definitely under eating right now in my current cut phase, because I have the metabolism of a flea, which is part of the reason that after this last hurrah, I'm going back into doing a significant reverse diet, because I had a lot of success doing reverse diet a year ago. Went into a few fat loss phases, and it's kind of clear to me that I have neglected my attention on reverse dieting and coming back into needing some attention on that experience. Catherine says, I have an ED on and off 20 years. Tremendously surprised that being ketovore got me out of that hole. I am truly thankful for your videos and so helpful for people. Oh, thank you, Catherine. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think when you've spent a lot of your life having an eating disorder, you develop sort of ruts, right? You've walked the same road a lot, and there's now like a rut in your road, and it's super easy to fall back into that rut. And so even if the food kind of brings us out of the rut, like I'm on the road, I'm not in the gutter anymore, but like the gutter's still there, and there are ways we can very easily be back in it without realizing. So I think it takes a fair amount of awareness to stay on the road for some of us. And like in this extreme cut experience I've been having over the past few weeks, almost a month now, maybe it's a month. Like on Sunday, I was like, I'm not really okay right now. I need to eat a little more. And so I took a day where I ate more at what I would call maintenance level for me. It was an additional like 300 calories. It wasn't a ton. It wasn't a binge. I didn't go off, any significant way. But I had to say, like, you know what? It's more important today that I take care of myself and eat a little bit more so that I feel a little mentally stronger. And it was exactly the right thing. It was exactly what I needed. And then I was back at it the next day. Nothing crazy. It wasn't like a binge, like I said, it wasn't a binge. I think it's really important. I think for so long, my life was about restriction and binging. And those were like my two speeds: restrict, binge. And now, over the last 5 years, really learning, what does it mean to eat healthy? What does it mean to make a plan and stick to it? How do I become the person that keeps their word to themselves? And when something needs to shift, it's from a considered place rather than a impulsive place, right? And so, going on that journey, I think, is so important for us. Anna said, I have been carnivore since May, and I thought I had this, but after my mom's funeral yesterday, I ate a bucket of chicken, so it's not gone. Back on track today, but have to stay aware. Well, Anna, first, I'm very sorry about your mom, and don't beat yourself up at all in any way. We are mammals, right? We have sought comfort from food forever. When little kids want to nurse, it's not just a way for them to get fed, right? It's a way to seek comfort. And yeah, some of that is from the closeness with their mom and that bonding. But for us humans, food and comfort are just completely collapsed into each other. And so I just want to say, like, don't feel bad or beat yourself up for what is a fairly natural thing to do. Now, it might not have the outcome you want. And so, as a thinking, feeling person, we can say, I don't want to do that behavior. But I guess I just want to say, like, that you did that once is reasonable and should not, I want to make sure you're being kind to yourself about what happened. And yeah, you can make new choices, different choices moving forward. But, you went through a lot. And the fact that you had some chicken is probably not the worst thing you could have done. And I know what you mean. It probably wasn't just chicken. But it can be a way that we reach for that comfort. We feel better. It soothes our soul a little bit. And as long as on the far end of it, we don't end up beating ourselves up about that experience, it's just one foot in front of the other moving forward and nothing you have to feel bad about. So, and I hope that you're getting lots of comfort in other ways, and that there are people in in your life that are supporting you and giving you the love and support you need in this time, because that's a big thing going through a parent's death. Regardless of what your relationship with your parent is like, it's messy and it's a lot. So, sending you lots of love. Webby says, hubby and I try to do keto, but as carb sugar addicts, we keep falling off the wagon. Definitely comfort eating in our case due to a few tough months at work, and it's so hard to get back on. Okay, so literally just finished eating home-cooked burgers, fried eggs, slice of cheese, but I could easily eat a sack of fries right now. Sadly, I missed the first 30 minutes. Could you please give me a 30-second explanation of reverse? Yeah, I will get to that. I will make sure I do that again before we close. Anna says, we're on lockdown, so it's been tough. I only ate the chicken, so it could have been worse. Absolutely, Anna. And I'm so sorry. I don't know how to convey through the internet that that you're going through a really hard time. And I really send you so much love and support. And I hope you get what you need. And please reach out if you're having a hard day. I'm here. And I'm sure a lot of people on this thread would be happy to support you in any way they can from their computer anyway. So it's a lot, and be nice to yourself in any way you can. And you know what to do. So, all right. Well, we got about 8 minutes left. Let me go back to the reversing. So what is reverse dieting? Okay. So you guys know what traditional dieting is. You've got a period of time where you are intentionally reducing the amount of caloric intake so that you see reduced body fat, right? And I'm using the word calories here because it's the only way to talk about reverse dieting. I understand that there's more than calories to this, but it's the only way you're going to understand what I'm talking about. So maybe you started when you were eating a lot of crap and binging. You cleaned up the quality of your diet. That does a ton, but you also probably ended up eating a little bit less. And so one of the things that happens when you diet for a very long period of time, or you've been dieting for a lot of your life, is you end up eating less and less and less, and you don't see the weight loss you want, so you eat less. And then you don't see the weight loss you want, you eat less. So there are a lot of people out there in the world who might be eating like 1,100, 1,200 calories for years on end, right? And so this is this very low caloric intake they've gotten to. And what's happened is our bodies go through something called metabolic adaptation. Metabolic adaptation is a totally natural process. Your metabolism isn't broken. You're a healthy human being because you have metabolic adaptation. However, metabolic adaptation, when it sees you eating less and less and less, turns down your metabolic rate because it's trying to make you survive, because it assumes you're in a famine. So the less you eat, the less you burn, the harder it is to lose. And so you're in this kind of, I call it the basement, the caloric basement. And you kind of get stuck there. And what a reverse diet is essentially like throwing open the door to the stairs to get out of the basement. So now you're eating a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more in very small graduated steps. And what you're trying to balance is additional caloric intake balanced with not gaining very much body fat. And so you're doing it slow and steady and incremental, keeping track of your caloric intake and your body weight and your measurements to make sure you're staying in the right range. And so I'll just give an example. Somebody starts at 1,200 calories, then they average for the next week 1,250, then 1,300, then 1,350, then 1,400. So like 6 weeks later, they're up 300 calories. I think that math is right, right? So it's just gone up a little bit, and that's a daily average. And at the same time, they're watching their weight to say, now it's natural when you start eating a little bit more, you have more food in your digestive system, you retain a little more water, you're going to see your weight go up, but you just want it to go up a small amount, which means it's unlikely to be body fat. If you start gaining a ton, too much, you will find that that's probably fat gain and you've blown past your limits. And so that reverse diet is really about just that little like stair step, little stair step, little stair step. Then you get to your maintenance level. You find the ceiling. You find your caloric intake where if you go beyond that, you're going to find yourself gaining more weight. So you're going up the stairs, up the stairs, up the stairs until you start noticing you're hitting your head on the ceiling, and hitting your head on the ceiling is code for have gained some weight, more than an acceptable amount to you, which you might set that number at 3 pounds, 5 pounds, something like that. And then you are going to hold there. You're going to hold at maintenance. That's your maintenance. Maintenance is defined as the caloric intake range where you will neither gain nor lose weight. You'll maintain your weight at that level. You're going to live there for a while. Now, if you wanted to, at that point, you could do another reverse to see if you could push that ceiling a little higher. Or you may decide I've been maintaining for a while, and then I'm going to try another cut in the future, because reverse dieting after you've been living in the basement is a great way to set yourself up for future success. So it's not that we reverse to lose body fat, though in early stages of reversing, you might still be losing body fat because you've only gone up a little bit. But ultimately, the goal of reversing is not so much immediate fat loss as it is setting your body up well for future fat loss that eludes you when you live in the basement. Because when you live in the basement, there's nowhere to go. You can't go down anymore because there's bedrock, right? You cannot, unless you buy a drill, right? You got to go somewhere. So you got to go up. And so it's just a very sane approach. And a lot of wonderful things happen when we start eating more. Like our energy goes up, our ability to exercise goes up, our ability to put on muscle mass goes up. We feel better, we think better, we function better. I'm on a campaign to get people to stop chronic dieting and instead do targeted, specific approach to dieting, to body fat loss, so we can live the rest of our life in a body that functions well, rather than ending up an 80-year-old that can only eat 800 calories, or else they'll see they're gaining weight. And that is what I would like to avoid for all of us. All right, last questions, and then we'll wrap it up. Nancy says, been focusing on protein again. Finally tried Too Good yogurt plus cottage cheese. Very yummy. I love it. Yeah. I might have missed something. Grammy says, yeah, life happens, when it settles down. Don't know numbers. Old docs hates keto, even though I lost 80 pounds. Heart rate and blood pressure have dropped. Have not found another for 2 years. Keep on the search, Grammy, for a good doctor. Oh, I see. I missed a conversation. It looks like you guys are having a conversation. So good on ya. Wow. Oh, wow. 10-year-old upload grandson, seizures down to 3 to 5 a week, from 50 to 190 a day. Wow. That's amazing, Grammy. So amazing. Webby says, the body is clever. Absolutely. Anna says, I've done a few extended fasts lately and my hair is falling out. Related, what to do, more protein. So a couple of things. Hair falling out, especially after you've just started fasting, is something to pay attention to. Low protein is going to cause hair loss, as is just low nutrients and too low a caloric intake. So if you've been doing more extended fasts, I'd make sure you're doing appropriate feasting when you're not fasting. Now, if you've started this fasting and your body is just, you've lost a lot of weight, sometimes we just lose hair in a response to fat loss, because, again, the body is like, there must be a famine. We should conserve energy. Hair is not that important. Let's let this person survive. So I would look overall at, are you getting enough nutrients in your feeding windows? The other thing is, for some people, extended fasting does cause an adrenal response. And that adrenal response, the stress response, can cause hair loss. And so you have to look at all of those things together and see what the best path forward is for you. Nancy asked, am I still working on pumpkin recipes? Yes, I am. And if you want a lot of my pumpkin recipes, my holiday cookbooks do have a ton of pumpkin recipes already. So there you go. I see that Tracy said something. Tracy said, my A1C has gone from 6.0 to 5.1, and my insulin is down to 11.6, down 60 pounds. Well, congratulations. I'm so glad. And I am glad that you seem to have survived chemo. So congratulations on getting to the other side of chemo. I appreciate how much effort and work and how hard that must have been. So please accept my congratulations to your health successes. Okay. All right, guys. So we're going to wrap it up at 6:01 here. So about to be time for me to make dinner and then do what I always do when I'm done with this video, give my face a scrub, because I put on makeup for these videos. And then I feel weird with it on in my house. I don't feel weird with makeup. Why am I telling you this? I feel weird with makeup on in my house, but I don't feel weird with makeup on out in the world, but I'm in my house. So, all right. And then there's dinner to be made. I am going to be making I have 2 cuts of meat in the fridge right now. I have a tri-tip and a flank steak. So we'll see which one I pull out. Maria says, do you personally help with macros? I do. I have a coaching membership, which I don't have open all the time, but I am thinking of opening that soon. And I will let you know when it's open, and then I will help you in there. So great to be here with you guys. Have a fabulous week. I will see you next week. Bye-bye.